Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the West Mead Township Town Hall meeting for garbage collection. My name is Don Bovard. I'm one of the supervisors here at West Mead Township, along with Mike Jordan and John Turtle and the other supervisors. Sitting in the back is our Secretary-Treasurer, Jill Dunlap. I'd like to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules on a nice late spring Saturday morning to be here. How many of you were at the meeting we had in October at the fairgrounds? Okay, so we've got quite a few new people. Thank you. Thanks for coming back. So what we'd like to do this morning is have Brenda Schmidt from the Crawford County Solid Waste Authority and Michelle Nestor from Nestor Consulting do a real quick review of what we talked about at the October meeting at the fairgrounds, and then let's talk about what we could put into bid specifications. I've only heard from 3 people, one of them being this morning, whether they're in favor or against any kind of mandatory garbage collection. And I'll be honest, all 3 said leave it the way it is. But the sampling size of 3 is not very many when you have over 5,000 people in the township. I think, and I don't want to speak for Mike and John, they're here, they can speak for themselves, but I think where we're at as supervisors is we at least would like to put together some sort of a bid package, put it out to the contractors, and see what it would cost. And I personally think that from seeing what was done out in one of the western townships here in Crawford County, we don't even want to explore voluntary exclusively. We don't think that would do anybody any good. The prices are not going to be any better than what you can get on your own right now. So I think our 2 options, and maybe I'm wrong, Mike and John might disagree with me, but I think our 2 options are to leave it alone like it is right now, or go with a mandatory exclusive. And there are different ways to do that, and Brenda and Michelle will talk about that. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Brenda and Michelle.
I'll let you go first and explain why I'm doing everything.
So good morning, and thank you so much for coming out. It's nice to see everyone, and quite a crowd. Appreciate that. We're so excited. I'm Brenda Schmidt from the Solid Waste Authority, and we're happy to work with our municipal governments and we're happy to work with our municipal governments so we can help people reach out and look at options, the ways to help you manage trash and recycling, composting in your townships for your residents. There are lots of options out there, and we're going to explore them. It is not a goal for us to make sure that you do something. It is a goal for us to help you see what your options are. That's what's important to us. So we have hired Michelle Nestor from Nestor Resources to work with us. Michelle has many years of experience in the waste industry, so she's going to help walk us through these options. If you were here in October, it's the same presentation. The supervisors wanted us to do this again because we didn't quite, it was, with the pandemic on, we got a lower amount of people. It was at the fairgrounds in the dairy tent. It was cold. So we understand, give everyone an opportunity to come back and give it, others who couldn't brave that could come out and do it. So thank you so much. And Michelle.
Okay. And I do appreciate how many people came out on a first sunny or semi-sunny day in a week or so here. So like Brenda said, the reason I'm here is just to kind of give advice, explain, inform. I'm not a stranger to Crawford County. I've been working with the authority for well over 20 years, so I know a lot about the municipalities, how the governments function. And, we've been also trying to inform the supervisors what their options may be. But, it always boils down to what's best for the community and how the community feels about those kinds of services. So it is kind of an investigative process. There's no conclusions that have been made, to my knowledge, thus far, other than what Dawn said. They don't really like the voluntary, or he doesn't like the voluntary exclusive, which I'm going to explain those terms in a while, because we do use terms in the waste industry that we all think everybody understands, and we find out later that we're speaking in code to people. So I'm going to apologize for this beautiful blank screen. You do have some sheets here today. Technology was not our friend, so I'm going to be speaking from these. I may not go in exact order because I have a tendency, especially when we have a short time frame, to want to get the information to you. So I may, be 3 slides ahead of where I should be, but we'll cover everything at the end of the day. Today we are going to talk about, and I better to use my cheat sheet there. Brenda mentioned how this project started originally is, if you're from West Mead, you had a great recycling program, and this was one of the busiest drop-off places. Due to cost and some other factors, the county had to withdraw those services. And so the authority decided that to replace that kind of service, they would start offering technical assistance to municipalities who wanted to see how they could do recycling on their own. And sometimes that's curbside, but there's also times when people have trash service as a contract with the township. They can fund a drop-off through that program also. But curbside is a lot more convenient for people. So what the township supervisors told us is they'd like to see the quality of life improve in the township. They like to increase property values, and that's one of the things that when you do have participation in waste collection, new families that are coming in, and I believe this is a pretty growing township from the numbers I've seen, it makes it a lot easier to sell your house and things like that. So what we're looking for is value-added services. So right now, maybe you just have waste collection. If we were to put a contract together, we would be looking at what could we add to that for the same or hopefully a lower cost. And that is what happened in the city of Meadville when they decided to switch the way they did collection. So they added 2 different services to their existing service, and they came in at actually a lower price than what they were paying before the city did. And things that we would be looking at is unifying the materials that are accepted, looking at how you handle bulky items like white goods and couches and things like that, and how your rate would be structured. So I'm going to go through a lot of those today, just as informative. I'm going to ask you if you please save your questions till the end. Those of you who were here last time know that we'll spend as much time as it takes to answer all your questions. If I don't have an answer, I'll get back to Jill and we'll find out how to get to you and get that answer to you. So the first thing I want to talk about is understanding how your waste collection bill is calculated. So there's a lot of things that go into it, and I need you to understand that getting the truck down the street is the most expensive part of the bill you pay for waste collection. It's not the disposal. So fuel, labor, maintenance on the trucks, the equipment itself, insurance, bonds, all those things go into your bill. So 75% of the bill you pay each month goes to get those trucks down the street. So whether you put garbage out or not, if you're paying for collection, that truck still has to come down your street just in case. So if you're on a bag program, for instance, it's really hard to calculate what the cost of that bag should be because you have to cover the cost of this truck. And the same if recycling is included in your contract or your service that you have right now. And I'm going to use contract because that's what you have as a personal relationship with your hauler. You have a contract with them because you pay for their service. So don't interpret that as this is a forgone. It's just the word that's easy for me to use. So say you recycle a lot and you don't put that much waste out. That recycling truck, somebody's got to pay for that too, so recycling's not free. That's calculated into your cost too, and the truck has to come by whether you put it out or not. Some of the things that affect prices in communities are a hauler's fear of not getting paid, or whether the local government will back up the contract for them. So that's why we have ordinances also when we're talking about waste collection. I want you to think a little bit about, say, driving from here to Walmart. If you did that every day, same distance, if you went the same route, it would cost you the same. And that is what happens with waste collection. When they come down your street, it costs them the same every time they come down the street. If 2 houses on that street get waste collection, they divide the cost of coming down your street by 2 houses. If 4 houses participate, the cost of going down that street gets divided by 4 houses. So that's why, in general, waste collection contracts, or a single hauler contract in a community, can bring in a lower price than when multiple haulers are servicing a community. Now, I'm going to say in general, because it's like rolling the dice, any bid, you don't know whether you're going to get a lower price. And the reason for that is, right now, you might be getting, the bargain service. But when a municipality decides that they're going to seek out a single hauler contract, they add in things like bonding, insurance requirements, equipment requirements. They have time constraints on when there's service, all these things. Solicitors add in all kind of extra legal language. So there's a chance that sometimes I have seen, it's rare, but I have seen the price go up because of all these things we add in. Right now, your haulers don't really have many regulations other than stipulations on their equipment and leaking and things like that. But other than that, they have a lot of free reign. So in general, if you take those fixed costs to go down the street, and the more homes you can divide that by, the lower your price should be. Now, disposal's different for everybody. So there are some communities that have a base price that covers all the collection, and then they add on bags or carts or something like that. That's a little more complicated of a contract, but it does make it more fair in some respects for people who just dispose of a little bit. And we'll talk a little bit about the different rate structures here. So a lot of haulers still offer what we call unlimited collection service. And that means you can put everything, including your grandma, out at the curb, and the hauler will take that away. And a lot of people think that's a really good deal because, for this one price, it doesn't matter how much garbage I have. But there's, it's a little secret we have in the waste industry that we know ahead of time how much waste you generate. So unlimited is a good sales pitch. It makes it sound like you're getting more for this price, but in reality, you're paying for everybody else that's putting out couches and washing machines and things like that. Ask yourself, how many couches did you put at the curb last year? How many washing machines? So you really need to pay for that every month when you only need it maybe once every other year, or once every 10 years or something like that. So those are the kind of options that, we talk to communities about when they're going out to bid. And sometimes they pick the unlimited one because it's better. There are other ways of service where you're maybe limited by the amount of bags or cans that you're allowed to put out. And generally it is by the can when they bill that way. So maybe you're only allowed to put out 2 a week for a flat price. So that's an option that you could look at. A lot of people use the wheeled carts now, a lot of haulers do. So they may say that that is your limit. Everything that fits in that cart for a flat price is a way that you could look at getting service. In some communities, and this really gets more complicated, they have different sizes of carts. So everybody pays a base fee and then they pick a 36-gallon, a 96-gallon, or a 64-gallon cart. And so not everybody's price is exactly the same. Their collection cost is, but their disposal cost differs a little bit. And then we have pay by the bag. And most haulers these days, even if you're doing your own contract with them, like to see a base fee that covers their collection costs, and then they sell bags on top of that. If they don't do that, they tend to have bag prices that are a lot higher because they're guessing how many people are going to put out bags on that route. So, you know, with a base fee, maybe your bag's gonna be $2. Without one, it might be $5 to $10 a bag. And that's why that differs. Those are getting to be rare, just a pure pay-by-the-bag program. And then there are contracts that include a lot of services, including yard waste collection and recycling and your waste collection. And that's all for just one base fee. And it could be some of the garbage could be some of these services I described. And I apologize, this is a lot easier when there's visuals, but if you have your own service, you probably understand. So curbside recycling is something that is mandated in Pennsylvania in certain communities. West Mead is not quite there yet, and have we seen estimates for population from the census yet? You went down, okay.
Down a little.
So you're not mandated at all. Curbside definitely increases the amount of material that we collect, more so than a drop-off does, because, you know, it's a lot easier to wheel it down to the end of your driveway than pack it in your car and drive someplace. When we do contracts, you know, there's lots of choices for recycling. Some people get it once a month, some people get it every other week, and some people get it once a week. And my experience in having done this for a long time is that when you jump from once a month collection to an every other week collection, your recovery of materials takes a pretty big leap. But when you go from every other week to weekly, for the price difference, you don't see that much more material being collected. So I usually recommend, if your citizens are happy with it, I would stick with every other week to reduce the cost, especially if you have big enough storage containers for that. Leaf waste management is another thing mandated in some communities. You're not mandated, but I understand you do have some parts of the township that, you know, have yard waste problems, and that the township's been looking at ways to address that. That is something that can be put into a contract in creative ways. Not everybody, you know, especially I'm used to working with growing townships now that 10, 15 years ago were mostly farmland, and now we're little cul-de-sac communities, and they have, you know, little baby trees. And then I'm used to working with a lot of older communities, like in Allegheny County, where they have huge trees and they have to collect leaves almost every day in the fall because they just keep coming and coming. So some communities, like the new ones, their problem is grass, more so than leaves. And you may have some areas like that right now. Like, it's not unusual in a high-end suburb to see 15 to 17 bags of grass a week in front of one house. So that's a problem to handle, and it's a problem to compost, but it's something that we have to consider when we put a contract together too. So what about the other stuff that I talked about before? couches, white goods, things like that. There's a couple ways to deal with it. You can have the unlimited. You can build into your service that people are allowed to put one bulk item at the curb a week or a special day a month, which means everybody's still paying for that. Or you can take them out of the base service and establish a cost to get rid of each one of those items. And some people sell tags, which you have to put on the item that you put at the curb so the hauler knows that it's already paid for. A more convenient way is you call the hauler and they just put it on your credit card and they know, the driver knows that they're going to pick that up at your curb. So what are some of the advantages of having a contract? Everybody's afraid that the price is going to go up, and it can. So what we do when we build a contract is we put restrictions on pricing in the contract. We put fuel cost adjustments because, say if you went out to bid today, price of fuel is high. But maybe next year it will go down. So you want to take advantage of both. Haulers, if they're servicing you now, you may all be seeing price increases anyhow for whatever formula they want to use to raise your price for the cost of fuel. But in a contract, we set the formula and we give the limitations on how those price increases can occur, or price reductions, which does happen too. There's also performance requirements. So in the industry right now, there is a labor shortage. And you may not be experiencing it here yet, but in a lot of municipalities, we're seeing waste sit at the curb a little bit because there's not enough drivers. So you're supposed to have it picked up on Tuesday. They may not get there till Wednesday because they have to double up with their employees. When you have a contract, at least the township sets the standards and can protect the community against when the hauler does not perform for lots of reasons. Spillage on the street, oil spilled on the street, breakdowns, breaking your cans or throwing your cans around. I mean, there's a multitude of complaints we hear all the time. And then there's penalties when they miss your pickups and things like that too. So it's just a little more general accountability. And also a contract can set safety standards that you don't have right now. The township can decide how the hauler can operate there, and also can set equipment standards which go along with safety. Right now, haulers can operate as long as they obey the regulations of the state. If their truck is 20, 25 years old and it's glued together well enough and it's got a fresh coat of paint on it, it can operate. But that doesn't mean it's safe. And that is not just directed at small companies. I can tell you I've worked for corporations, and now it's an old thing we do is we make them look pretty, but that doesn't mean they run pretty. So, and then there's bonding also. So if there's an accident, if the hauler doesn't perform, the bond provides back enough cash for the township to continue that service and find another service provider. So this is the one question we get a lot, is when you do a contract, who's included in these things? So in general, for residents, it's people who live in structures that have 4 or less attached units. So like a duplex times 2, but not apartment buildings, not rows and rows of condos generally. When you're on a contract, and probably most of you that have service right now are like this, your service gets billed in advance. Usually it's billed by the quarter, so you're probably going to get billed a month in advance before the service starts. And when there's a contract, the service is limited to the lowest bidder that the township would award a contract to, unlike now where there may be multiples. Multiple companies right now is a rarity. I mean, how many do we have here now, legitimate?
The three, and then there's three smalls.
Okay. There used to be, 15 maybe, but that's kind of gone by the wayside. Some towns also decide to let small businesses opt into the contract. So businesses that generate about the same volume of material that a house would. And nowadays, it's not unusual to have businesses in homes too. So there's that choice. And then for places that either the residents go to Florida in the winter or people come here in the summer, there are conditions where you can have temporary discontinuation of services. So say you're going to go live in Florida for 3 months. You'd be able to shut your service off and not pay for it, and then it would automatically start again on a certain date. Those are some things that you can put in a contract also. So here's the 3 words that everybody wants to know what they mean. Mandatory. If the township would have a mandatory contract, that would mean every resident, or every property owner, I should say, of structures 4 units or less would be required to participate in the contract, and participation is pay for service. So voluntary exclusive means that the township would go out for bid, pick the lowest bidder, and that bidder would be awarded the exclusive rights to service people who want to subscribe to service in that township. So what they're trying to do is get the lowest rate possible for everybody who wants service. But it doesn't mean you have to have service. Mandatory means they're trying to get the lowest price and you have to participate. And then voluntary subscription is what you have right now. So there's nobody telling you that you have to have waste collection, and there's nobody telling you that if you want waste collection, that you have to use a particular service provider. So hopefully that's clear. If it isn't, I'll be happy to answer more questions about that later. So after today, what's going to happen is we have a bunch of comments that have come in from the last meeting and phone calls and things, and then whatever we hear today, we'll sit down with the supervisors and, they're gonna weigh what you have to say and decide, what is the best thing for the township to do. If they would decide that a contract is the best thing, then we will help them, based on your comments, fill in the blanks on what are the best services that should be included in this contract and what kind of rate structure fits the needs of everybody. If they decide that all the comments are negative, then we're done. And even if they did decide to go along with the contract, it's still an exploration. So they're going to ask for proposals. They'll review those proposals. And if they think the price compared to the services that are in that document are favorable to everybody, then they would make the decision whether or not to move forward. But the final decision doesn't come until they see pricing when they take that action. So it's still a hunt and seek kind of project until that final, pricing and if they think it looks good. And then when we put together, if we move forward with a contract or a bid, we would have another informational meeting where we would explain this is what's in it, this is what we think we heard, and then if there's comments, that's not what we want, we would tweak it again. It's not unusual to tweak these contracts several times before it gets out to the bidders, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. I know this was brief and quick today, but that's kind of what we wanted, because what we want to hear are your questions or your comments, and we'll try to handle this to the best of our ability. Any questions? Yes.
Under the mandatory, would everybody's property tax, is that how you pay, or you would pay individually?
Thank you for asking that question, because that's something I should have gone over, is how do you pay? So there's a lot of ways to do it. In general, smaller townships will just have the hauler bill the customer directly. It used to be that garbage service was included in property taxes, but that's very rare these days because a lot of municipalities found out that they were paying the bill for people who weren't paying their taxes, and that meant that the price had to go up to all the people who do pay. So it's generally that the hauler would bill the homeowner directly.
It seems like that would be a hassle for the hauler to try to collect from so many different people, and some people say, hey, you know, I'm not using it much. This seems like a problem.
It is indeed a hassle. I mean, they have it down to a science, but it's one of the things they consider. And that is why we could put exactly the same bid specs out in 3 different towns that look alike. But depending on the history or the demographics, the prices might all be different. And timing is something that's important too. You know, we could bid this today, we could bid this 6 months from now, prices may be different because of fuel, labor, whatever. But the risk of non-payment is something that they do consider. So they took a look at a town like this and they know a lot of people have service, probably isn't as much of a risk as, you know, a lower income city where it's their first contract and people have never had to pay for garbage collection. But that's a great question, I appreciate that. Anybody else? Yes?
Do you have any idea of the percentage of people in the township that now have some type of garbage collection?
Actually, we have some idea, don't we? But I can't remember the number right off the top of my head.
I don't remember either.
We did a study 3 years ago for the county, and it was surprising, in the townships, less than 50% of the people have waste collection.
15.
Only 15%
Less than.
had it, right?
Less than.
Less than 15 had it. That was an eye-opener to us, and as we were doing a recycling study, and, you know, Brenda quickly changed. She says, Crawford County doesn't have a recycling problem, they have a waste problem, you know. And we got those numbers directly from the haulers. I know the haulers, and I told them, I don't want addresses, I don't want names, I just want to know the house count that you service by municipality. And they were able to give that to us, and when we plotted it on a map, it was, you know, it was a big eye-opener. So I hand back here, yes.
Yeah, what about businesses that have contracts? Would they have to get into the
No.
new process, or we could stay where we're at?
You stay where you're at.
Okay.
And I might as well answer this question now because it always comes up. If I'm a business owner and I take my household waste to my business, can I continue to do that? And in general, the answer is yes. We usually write that into the ordinance that as long as you can prove that, you know, you have to come and fill out some forms at the township, then you're excluded from the contract. Yes?
In your proposal or your introduction to these services, you're talking about recycling and washers, sofas. In West Mead, we have pretty good services where we have a cleanup that most people, I hope, would use. And we also have a relief collection that the township runs. I mean, we're kind of spoiled because we have that. Your proposal is adding costs to the potential pickup of those items that we now have as a service.
Well, it's not a proposal.
I would say we're putting the
It's a-
cost to the user, because right now, the township is providing that service for free, but in reality, it's in your taxes.
Well, I understand that.
So,
It's not free.
you know, everybody is paying for that through their taxes, where if you did a service like this at the curb, then only the people who need that service would be paying for it.
So that wouldn't be part of the potential mandatory.
Sorry,
It would be mandatory if they decided to include that in the contract, but it doesn't have to be included in a contract. It's just an option that people consider,
And that
yes.
was in regards to the leaf collecting part of it.
Part of it was,
Well, if
right.
you remember correctly, when we bought that leaf truck, we did everything we could. Jill and I sat down for weeks and months, tried to do everything we possibly could to get money to cover the cost of that truck, which was quite tight to $160-some thousand. And we got kicked right to the curb. Reason why was because they wanted us to have garbage, burning ordinances, recycling, leaf collection. It all had to be made mandatory for us to qualify for any money. If you saw in this paper here a week ago, the city of Meadville, a year ago, bought the same identical truck that we have, and now those trucks are closer to 200,000, okay? 216, like just said. $19,000 is what that truck cost them out of their pocket. So there is advantages to some of this for the township. And you know, it's kind of like a trading thing, I look at it like, because if we got grant money, then we don't have to look to our residents to say, okay, well, let's increase taxes. And we don't want to do that. But, and another thing, on the tax side of things, if you don't understand your taxes 100%, come in here someday, sit down with Jill, she'll explain it to you, that what you pay the township for your services, boy, I'll tell you, you're getting a real bargain, because a lot of it, the average, I would say between $300 to $400 a year is what the average home, I would say, pays the township. Our schools, you know, schools, county, stuff like that are the ones that are, they're getting the biggest share of your tax money. But anyways, not to get off the subject, but I just want to say that there are advantages, and believe me, if there were, we would use them for grant money towards equipment, because, you know, that truck has been a big lifesaver. It took us from 4 to 5 people to 1 man, sometimes only 2, but mainly 1 in that truck. So now we can get more accomplished for our residents in our leaf collection season, because we run non-stop on that leaf collection. And I'm saying that someday we're gonna need to replace that truck, and Lord knows what that cost is gonna be, you know, 10, 15 years from now. So just other things to think about.
That's good. And to explain why the DEP requires these ordinances and everything is because the grants are coming out of a recycling fund, which has really diminished over time. And it was meant to service the communities that are mandated by Act 101. So if you're applying for a grant and you're not mandated, then they expect you to meet the same standards as the mandated municipalities, and that does make it more fair that way.
And that's what happened to us.
Right.
Excuse me, but that's what happened to us. We thought we were there, and, you know, we're doing everything we can to try to get as much of that truck paid for by grant money, and we ended up with nothing. So we had to do it. You guys, us, we bought that truck.
And I just kind of want to go over this one. I'm sorry, John.
No, that's fine.
So, in a contract, basically you're looking at waste collection. All these other things I mentioned, they're services that could be added in, so.
And that was
just-
my question.
Yeah,
No,
that's, yeah,
Probably
could be.
would not be included, because Westmead, like I said, we're spoiled. We have a good service. John and I had this discussion just this week about the grants that were lost because of. But then again, you're also looking at 3 or 4 different companies that we individually have contracts with, and some are negotiated, some are flat rates, as you said. Some people, 1 bag, it's pretty cheap, and if it starts to cost people more for pickup, you know, there's gonna be a lot of balking with that.
It's my life. I do this with a lot of municipalities, so the balking goes with the you're right. And, you know, sometimes it's a win. Sometimes you're surprised, the price comes in dramatically lower. Other times you say, okay, you know, let's can this idea, you know, it didn't work,
Well,
the
that's
prices. And that's the choice they would have.
Yeah, $140,000 the township paid for a piece of equipment because we did lack the opportunity for the grant.
Right, right. And I don't know how much your cleanups cost you, but I know a lot of townships, it's like $8,000 sometimes.
We
Sometimes
just paid
more.
it, Bill. and it was-
6?
6,
Yeah.
okay. I'm looking at the wrong person who would have the answer, yes.
So my question will be directed towards the supervisors. Is there a current garbage or is there any current garbage or junk ordinances on the West Mead Township books? And the reason I ask is, although this might be a great idea, those same people who don't follow any ordinances now aren't gonna put their garbage to the curb. And so if the idea is to make the value of the property go up, those same people are not going to take the time to follow another ordinance. I don't believe we have any specific one, but those current people aren't going to follow this. And I think all these folks in this room probably do.
Well, the program is only as successful as the people that participate in it.
But the original question though, is there a garbage or junk ordinance in the township? Of any type?
Property maintenance.
And so it does state you have to pick your garbage up and not have stuff in your yard, things like that.
Very limited. We do have some under the zoning and the property maintenance, but it's very limited, very minimal. That's what a lot of the residents have always preferred over the
Sure.
years. But that's something that we could look at further or.
Because somebody could just leave their garbage in the yard, and because of the limited the agreement right now, the property maintenance agreement, they're not breaking any law.
This ordinance is so old, I've read it and reviewed it as part of this process, that it actually says that people couldn't bury their waste
Exactly.
on their property. So, you know, it's arcane, it's
It's
just
not that I'm opposed to what they're
ineffective.
doing, actually, I kind of like all the ideas, and I talked to Brenda, and maybe Brenda has convinced me more about solid waste because of her position, but I think prior to doing something like this, if you don't update that ordinance,
Right.
people are still gonna bury their garbage in the ground, or just leave it in their backyard, which is normal too.
No, it's a really good point. In fact, that would go hand in hand,
Exactly.
because you can't,
You
the
don't-
contract controls the hauler, but an ordinance is what tells the public what
Right,
their
I just think maybe the
responsibility.
cart before the horse theory is.
No, that's fine, you know, I mean, I was winging it with pieces of paper today, so I'm not real organized, yes.
In our area, we don't have a problem with people leaving their garbage in the backyard. We have a problem with people burning whatever they, accumulate, plastics, styrofoams. It's a real issue, and late at night, a lot of times this happens. You have your windows open in the summer, you have to close them or else smell that air. We've tried calling police, but, we don't know when they get there to see if anything actually has been burned, it's illegal, or, if they get there at all, or, so it's.
We do address a lot of burning complaints in the township. And believe me, I think just about every one of us have been out on them, okay? And, there's a process. You have to give a warning. And then, first of all, you have to hope that you're dealing with somebody who will at least be reasonable with you. There's been a lot of times that we've been told to get off, get out, But again, we do address burning complaints. And a lot of that, I believe, would help if we did have something more mandatory, because it gives them another option. But again, I would say that most of the people that burn don't want to pay for something. So they're just getting rid of it that way. And I heard Chris say, well, what do people do with their garbage? Well, they burn it, as much as they can. Or, they're doing something else, some other direction, for sure.
And we've lived in the township for 38 years. And when we first moved in, it seemed like, very few people had the bags out at that time. But now it seems like, most of our neighbors do have garbage collection, so it's, the ones that are burning are affecting most of us,
And I will tell you also, the township road department, and I can't give you an exact number, but I mean, it's something that we address all the time. all year long. We pick junk up, we pick TVs up, tires, couches, you name it. We pick it up and try to dispose of it. Because we have a dumpster here that and we have the equipment to handle it. But yet it's one other thing, it's one other item that we have to address numerous times in the township. And I mean, right off the top of my head, I can tell you, Terrace Street, Phelps Road, Williamson Road, Town Line, all the time. DeVore Road, bottom of DeVore, right there on the left-hand side. People back in, they dump, they're in, they're out. We see it, we pick it up. You know, and I think a lot of people dump in West Mead because they know we're disciplined enough to clean it up, because we don't want to deal with it, you know, but we do have to. So that's a problem too.
I would say a follow-up to that would be that then if you do pass a garbage ordinance, A, how is it enforced? B, what punitive damage associated with it? And C, if someone just tells you to pound salt, what do you tell them then? Because I think now that's where we're at, where people, there's no way to enforce the limited property maintenance codes we have now. You guys have tried to help me, and I appreciate that, but you can only go so far before someone tells you, I don't care what you say.
Yeah.
So we can't send the police, right? You can't send a fine or a penalty if we pass another ordinance and there's no teeth to the ordinance. I just think people just won't do it.
Right, there has to
And
be.
then the rest of us are still gonna do, obviously they'll pay for it, but they won't follow through.
And here's
Those are
another thing
definitely
I'll
good
tell you
components.
real quick, like, too, and that is, I can remember here a number of years ago, Jill and I were working on a piece of property over here on Barton Road. And believe me, we stayed after this guy constantly because it was just terrible. And we ended up through the court process, which is costing now, we're spending your money to go to court. But before it was over with, we got told that it's borderline harassment on our end because we were taking this guy and we were staying after him, trying to do what we thought was the right thing. And then we got told it's borderline harassment on the township side. So now they're looking at us saying, you need to back off because you pushed this guy way too far. And that's what, you know, you deal with that as well. So when you get told that, all you can hope for is that you have a room full of people or a person that you're dealing with that's willing to listen, willing to understand, and that you can work together with. And, you know, it's no different than our cleanup stuff. Only, I can tell you, we had 12 30-yard dumpsters this year. A lot of junk. And I'm going to tell you, it was all people that I expected to see. All the ones that didn't come, I can drive through the township, Autumn Hills, Jim, blighted properties, people that don't care. So it's not easy for us because we know where the problems are at and what we need to do. And again, we're not here to shove anything down anybody's throat because nobody wants that. Okay, so I don't know. Mandatory garbage would be helpful, but we need all your opinions as well.
And there's a service I forgot to mention that can be added also is, we've probably all experienced the difficulty in getting rid of old televisions and things like that. So that's a common service that's added into contracts these days, which doesn't really affect the price much at all. So on any, week, month, you just have to call up whoever the service provider is and explain what you have, and they schedule the pickup for you. But that's an option people are considering. So I had back here, I think, again, and then here. Are you done asking back here? Okay, then here.
Okay. I like
And
the
then
idea of exploring this. When I went to the first meeting, I was there to oppose, but after I heard and understood exactly what was going on, I think it's a good idea. My problem is, and I love the leaf pickup, and I appreciate when they have the cleanups where you can take things. The problem with that is, if somebody would come around in the community and say, I'll charge you $20 to take your stuff up or whatever, because a lot of people don't have those vehicles in order to get this stuff up there. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think you need more than just 1 or 2 cleanups a year. I would put that in the contract to see how that comes. Because, for instance, we've had neighbors that in between have had to get a new stove or refrigerator, and they leave it sit in the driveway until it's time to do that. And it's bad. I mean, I live up in the back of Autumn Hills, and I'll tell you what, in the back, people keep up their property, mostly. There's some that have been abandoned or whatever, I don't know what's going on.
We're
but-
working on that.
Yeah, but coming up through the main drive, I mean, there has to be some sort of, I can understand your frustration, John, you know, or the rest of the supervisors. There has to be a way to keep residents accountable for the outside of their facility, their homes, for the rest of the neighborhood. And it really scares me up there because there's a lot of people that are now buying them and renting them out. They come and go, you know, so you have a lot of trash sitting there. I have somebody that's close to where we are that is now bringing trash from another house up there and burning in their house, you know, garbage. And the same thing just happened to me. I was so mad because it was the first beautiful day and they're burning and I had all my windows open. And I was out front, so didn't even realize till I went out back and everything was already in my house and I was just, I wanted to scream, you know, but you can't. You have to
Burning is a
control
real
yourself.
problem.
But I think that I would like to see the proposal with something in there for larger items, maybe once a month or something like that to get rid of stuff. Otherwise, it just sits there. And you know what? That's why you need, I don't know if you can do it legally, but to say that you have to have, I mean, if you have a truck or a car sitting in your driveway and it's completely broke down, and it's been sitting that way for so long, you should be able to have ordinances or that you can't have trash from your job sitting there and stuff like that. I think that, I mean, I don't know legally if you're allowed to have ordinances that tell you that you can't have all that stuff piled up.
We work on it, but again, you gotta take it a step at a time. And you have to give so much of the process, start here, and then if you end up in the courtroom, you know, then you're starting to spend serious money.
Yeah.
You know, and we try to not do that because our budgets
Oh,
are
sure.
really tight here.
Sure.
And in answer to your cleanup question, you know, this pandemic really threw a sprag in the wheel on that cleanup. But I will tell you, in the last 2 cleanups that we've had have been extremely successful.
Yeah.
9 dumpsters a year ago, 30-yard dumpsters plus our metal, 12 dumpsters this year plus our metal. And so we spent about $6,000 on this cleanup, okay, tax dollars. But if you have another one, that's $12,000, or you hope it would be, you like to have them successful, but the success comes with a cost, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely.
So I'll tell you, it's not easy to run the cleanup, because you've got to be, I mean,
Plus the manpower.
the manpower, and, you know, we've done pretty well on the manpower and stuff like that, but they're not cheap.
Well, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know, it's just that,
And it's a guessing game for us too, you know?
I have a question. How many homes are in West Mead?
2,500.
2,500, and that includes all, right? Okay, so it'd be less than that, but, so you take your $6,000 and divide it by that, probably be way less than that in a waste collection contract. It's pretty negligible what they add on, but, okay, right here, finally.
I was concerned, a couple things. This is mandatory. Are they going to be able to put a lien on your house if you decide you don't want to participate? That's what Meadville Area Water Authority will do. Okay. Another thing, a lot of aging people in this community that have one bag of garbage and their kids take it for them and put it in their garbage can.
A lot of ordinances that we write, we make exceptions for things like senior citizen discounts, people with disabilities.
But they'd still have to pay something.
Pardon me?
They would still have to pay something?
they may have to pay something, sometimes they have a voucher system. It depends on the township and, what their finances are, but there's ways around some of that to take care of people who may be disadvantaged and that it's difficult to pay.
Well, I know a lot of people are having a hard time just paying for their prescription drugs.
Right.
And their kids are trying to help them taking their garbage. They don't need another bill that's mandatory put on them.
So, I talked about how you recover more recyclables at the curb than you do at a drop-off. And I don't know how much money, well, you didn't collect any, I guess the county did it to provide the service, right? But the state provides a performance grant for, there's money paid for every ton of recyclables that are collected in a municipality. So some of the municipalities will take that performance grant money, and that's how they service the voucher systems.
Okay, I have one more
Sure.
question. You said on this, it's 4 structures and less, correct? Why is it 4? Because I know a lot of places, the tenants, they'll just pick up and leave, and the landlords are stuck with all this garbage. Why aren't they being mandatory? Why is it 4? Why can't it be 10?
Oh, it could be anything. It's
I
just,
mean,
that's what most municipalities do, is 4
I mean, 'cause I
and less.
know
But you bring up a really good point.
there's a lot of places sitting out there empty right now, especially next to your house.
So, the most successful ordinances
I'm
and
sorry.
contracts bill the property owner, not the tenants, because tenants tend to do exactly what you say, is they don't have collection and then they leave and the apartment's full of stuff, or they get evicted and then the landlord just shoves it all out to the curb, and then there's an argument over, does this place have service or does it not have service? When property owners are billed, it's usually more successful, but that's another choice that the township, would have to make.
Well, I know I recently, God, before the pandemic came through, sold my rental property. And thankfully, I had very good tenants. But I know of other places,
Right.
not so good. So I paid the sewage bill,
Mhm.
and then in turn,
Yeah, it's a pass-through.
I
But-
collected from them.
Right.
And they paid, thank goodness. But a lot of people aren't.
Yeah, and that's because there's no ordinance that says what has to be done right now. So,
I'm like right in the middle
Sure.
on this whole thing.
everybody is really, I think.
Nobody wants to say, hey,
You
this
have
is
to do this,
mandatory.
right.
Because when there's a little competition, there's how many companies around here? I can call and say, hey, and this happened to me, I was paying a tremendous amount of money for
Mhm.
waste management. I said, hey, I'm gonna go to Raccoon Refuse because I'll be paying half of what I'm paying now. And they're like, oh, well, we'll just bring your bill down and you can pay that amount now. So I was able to bring my bill down and still stay with my current
One
provider.
way to ensure that competition stays, because I'm real sensitive to that, I've worked for family companies too, so
Yeah.
that business is their retirement, is usually what they're counting on, so they want to sell it, when they're done. So, that's why we don't like to touch the commercial accounts, because that allows the people who aren't the successful bidder to still stay in business with commercial. So it changes hands a lot. You just have to be careful that the bid is fair. So I have a love-hate relationship, I would say, with bigger companies, because they have people that will come in and talk to Jill and the supervisors and say, this is what should be in your contract. But it's not bad advice, but it's likely to favor their needs. Where, when we come in as a team, we make sure that every business could bid on this contract. It's not going to exclude smaller companies. So you keep your competition. So we have here, and then there, and then you.
I live on Limber Creek Drive, and we have a small condo association with 11 units, and we presently have a contract with a company we're very happy with. would we be allowed to keep our contract under the way it is?
It depends. Some haulers actually have a written contract with their customers. And usually, if a township's gonna enter a bid, they'll put a stipulation on existing customers as of such and such date. And then, as those contracts expire, those people come into the township's contract.
What if we were happy with what we have now and, didn't want to change?
If it was mandatory, you'd just run out your contract and, yeah, that would be it.
The only thing, they do have an HOA, a homeowner.
Oh,
so
okay.
Just
okay.
to clarify,
Okay,
that
yeah,
may be
thank
an
you.
option.
Yeah, so if you're a group, it would be considered a commercial contract, actually.
Okay,
So,
so you could be exempt.
right.
Or you could opt in if you want.
Correct, yeah, because that's what some towns do too, is they give the HOAs the opportunity to opt in, because the price might be better than what you get on your own. Over here?
I just wanted to talk on the rental part. I'm speaking from experience because I have a couple rentals out in Salisbury Township. And Salisbury went to mandatory garbage pickup.
No,
Gave my-
Sadberry is voluntary exclusive.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Because I got a mandatory bill from Tri-County.
Yeah, it was a mistake.
Okay, well, it's actually worked out pretty well. It's worked out well with the tenants because it's kept the properties cleaner. They're participating and they're getting rid of their garbage. So, and when I have tenants leave, there's no transition. I don't have to worry about a lapse in service.
Yeah, well, and that's a good point, because I found this with recycling, where some towns would have curbside recycling and it would be free, and nobody was participating, and so town in central Pennsylvania decided they were just gonna add $2 onto the sewage bill and make it a line item for recycling, and suddenly the whole town started recycling, because they're like, well, we're gonna pay for it, we might as well participate. So sometimes free isn't the best thing, Yes.
Two things. Typically, how long in years is a contract normally written up for?
So it varies. I don't like to do them for less than 3 years. 5 years is good. And the reason is, everything that goes into that contract is going to be written off in the time period, the length of the contract. So if they have to buy new trucks, because this is a new town they're servicing, if you have a 3-year contract, they're going to write off the price of that truck in 3 years, which means your monthly bill's higher because it's, less time. So the amount of time a municipality is allowed to bid, the max is 5 years with 5 years worth of options. So it could be 5 one-year options, 1 5-year option, or, a combination of years. So if you could have somebody for 10 years. With a brand-new contract, I usually suggest you go a little less just to see what happens, yes.
If you agree to the mandatory and it's voted or however it's put into place, and you're going law-abiding and doing what you're doing as a homeowner, and you sell your home, how do you get the new homeowners to jump on board of this contract too? Is there a way of making them, or can they just say they're not doing it?
The new homeowners, well, that is a problem. So there's got to be a mechanism for turnover of property owners. So usually you're going to deal with the tax rolls or closures, but the haulers would notify those new people. And sometimes realtors just get on board. When a town has a contract, we will give the realtors the flyers that explain how garbage service is done in the town, because sometimes it's a selling point, and that's who. So you wouldn't be on the hook as the seller, but the people moving in would then be.
I was just kind of looking at it as everybody else is abiding by it, and you got one person that isn't gonna do it, and they got garbage everywhere. And they're not,
Be amazed when it's mandatory how many reporters you have. Somebody else? Oh, okay, back here.
Yeah, I was wondering, is recycling currently required by state law?
Recycling is required in certain municipalities, and it is dictated by population and population density. So it's 10,000 and 5,000 with population density of 300 people per square mile if you're only 5,000. But if you're 10,000, it doesn't matter what your population density is. But every place else is voluntary.
That's why the county just considered recycling, because there was no requirement.
Right.
For it. Okay. Also, is it possible potentially to combine with the city of Meadville if we went mandatory?
It's possible, you know, I mean, both local governments would have to agree. It'd probably be advantageous at some point in time, but you'd have to get on that cycle whenever the city of Meadville's contract would expire. And then, you know, likely, since they're established, I would think West Mead would have to agree to the kind of service that Meadville has. But you already know what that price is. I don't know what that price is right now, but somebody here knows what that price is. Yes.
You said the hauler would be the one billing the client. What teeth do they have to get someone to pay if they don't want to participate?
It has to be in the ordinance that would give them, you know, what authority they have.
So it really goes back to the township.
To some extent. I mean, you know, they're a business, so they have some rights. But it's a lot easier if the ordinance says that they can take the people to the magistrate and they could put a lien on it or, you know, whatever the ordinance may say, but that's usually how it is. Now, there are some instances, you know, like the city of Meadville, the water authority bills. Sometimes the township bills, if they already have a mechanism to do that. But in a first-time contract, if you don't have all of that, it's a lot easier to just have the hauler do it. They have collection agencies.
It just seems like the participation rate right now is so low that that's going to be a serious problem, whether you're in favor of it or not. The total number of people that are here is a small proportion, and it seems like that's going to be the real concern.
It always is, yeah. It's surprising, though. I mean, I've done a lot of first-time contracts that people just gradually come on board. You know, the same people who don't pay for water, don't pay for sewage, don't want garbage collection in general. I mean, it kind of follows that trend. I mean, that's a real generality, but, you know, that's kind of follows that.
Do you have some kind of a PR campaign outline that could be used or something?
Sure, that can be done easily. Brenda's really good at that. But yeah, that needs to happen. If you don't communicate, you need to communicate months in advance, multiple times, that it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, and preparing the people for what the services are going to be, and that, you know, you're going to get this bill. Don't be shocked if you get this bill, which is what happened in Salisbury. It's supposed to be voluntary. But I know, it was a real mix-up. I don't know, supposedly the billing clerk sent out notices to everybody, and it made the phones ring, and that's what you don't want to have happen. So, but if it's mandatory, that is what would happen. But you want people to know in advance that bill's coming, or it's a shock. So, yes.
I just wanted to mention that the benefits of competition was brought up. We live on a little dead-end street. We have garbage trucks coming down 5 days a week, you know, as early as 6:30 in the morning. I mean, it just, it's crazy, the wear and tear on the roads and the inefficiency of it. So I just wanted that to be.
There's another advantage too, is, you know, we struggle trying to keep these roads. And believe me, it's not easy. And the amount of money that we get every year to update roads is not even close to the damage that we receive every year because of not just garbage trucks, but it's trucking. And they do damage. So.
Yes.
Do you have an existing list of the contractors that you deal with now?
Well, For ones that I know that have submitted bids, yes. I mean, we have like 4, I think, that I know of that have shown interest in bids in the area. But it's not that hard to track down all of the haulers.
Who are the ones that you have now?
So, well, we did have Waste Management and Advanced Disposal, but now they're one and the same. And then we have Raccoon and Tri-County Industries. And there might be another,
There's the 3 big ones. There's also 3 small ones out there.
Yeah.
So J&K, Rams, and Simpsons.
Do you have any type of number that you're willing to share right now?
I always wait for that question. If I owned the company, I could do the math and I could tell you what the price would be based on the specs. But I don't know what every company's overhead is and all that, so.
What are some of the average contracts you have now?
Depends on the area, you know.
Something close to West Mead.
It depends on what services you're gonna have. I mean, I just can't,
This is why people get nervous because.
I know, but
you're
that is
about
also
to
why you have the
don't
right to
do enough.
reject the bids.
Pardon me?
That's also why you have the right to reject the bids.
I understand that. Is it $50 a quarter? Is it $150 a quarter?
It won't be 150, I can guarantee you
Will it
that,
be 50?
you know. Maybe, depending on what services you have. No.
So have you bought a truck?
Pardon
Have you
me?
bought a vehicle?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I tell you today, how much you gonna spend? You have that idea in your head, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, it's in your head, but when you go to the market to buy it, especially today, because computer chips have a problem, steel is up, there's nothing in the pipeline coming through. If you want to buy a truck, that number you have in your head will not get you the number that you were thinking, what's with it. So if I want to go buy a truck, I want to go shopping, I think to myself, well, I want the Lariat package or whatever. And when I get the more things I add to the truck, the higher the cost goes. But I have to go shopping to see what's out there and what I like, and I have to put that investment into it, right? And that's exactly what we're doing. It's the shopping part of it. But I don't have to buy anything. I don't have to buy anything when I get there.
But when I go, I know about what the average of the price is of what I'm looking for. You are doing contracts now, you must have an idea of what it is actually.
I don't know what it'll
Saying-
actually be, but what I will say is that when you bring this back, or even when you start, every one of you knows what your garbage bill is, don't you?
Yeah,
Okay, who pays under $100 a quarter?
I do.
Who pays 150 or more? Okay, so we want to stay under the 100, but as up as we can. You probably all have a picture of where that number is for you, and when the contracts come back, or the bids, proposals, if it's higher than that, then the answer is no, we don't want this.
Brenda, what's a Saturday contract?
77, no, sorry, that.
111.
You have 111? No,
No.
111 a quarter.
111 quarter, there you go.
I don't think it went that high.
I think it was.
It was 67.
Brad, you said you're.
It's a pass-through to my tenants now, I don't know what it is at now.
77
I
is
swear
what
I
I
read
read.
in the paper it was 111 a quarter.
That's what I thought, it was around 100, so.
77, because I think somebody was like, when they called me, they were saying, I paid 67, and now it's up to 77. But we're dealing with a member here, I didn't bring that data with me.
Right
You think
now,
it's up?
I pay 111 a quarter in Tri-County, not include recycling.
Okay.
Every other week is recycling. And then plus, if I want to put a couch out or anything, all I do is call down and they'll put it out there. It's an additional fee, but it gives me an avenue to get rid of it.
There's another thing to consider, because people are afraid about prices going up. So this is another one of our little secrets in the waste industry. So the easiest place to raise prices is with subscription customers, because you don't notice it. So I live in a rural area in Butler County, and we don't have a contract. My neighboring municipalities do. So the hauler's under constraints in those municipalities because they have a contract, they can't raise the price. But yet, their costs are going up for other things. So in the past 5 years, my price has gone from $60 a quarter to $75 a quarter. in 50-cent increments that most people don't notice. And that's probably happening to a lot of you, and you're not noticing it either. So when you're in a contract, there is that control. When you're in a subscription situation, you could change haulers if there's enough of them to pick from, but they're probably doing the same thing too. Because most people, I think the average is like, it takes people 8 years before they even think about looking for another hauler when they have subscription service. So as far as competition and price increases go, you're probably experiencing them and not even knowing it. Yes?
Just one quick, let's say you went with it, the township, for a 5-year period. At the end of that 5 years, do they put it out for bid
Yes,
again?
yes, yeah. You won't want to be married for life in these things. Okay? Yes.
What century are we living in?
Last time I checked, 21st.
Well, let's pull ourselves up into the 21st century and get this ball rolling. This is, we're not driving horses and buggies anymore.
Thank you for that. Well, I always tell this little story too. So when all the drilling and everything began with fracking, you know, people were really concerned because we had companies from Texas coming up and they're not going to understand Pennsylvania's regulations. So I travel also for my job. So I went to Texas being asked to do a citywide collection contract. And as horrified as we were of these people not understanding our environmental regulations, these people in Texas were like, what do you mean people don't have mandatory waste collection in their residence? They were just, you know, shocked that we could let that happen at all in the 21st century. So, thank you.
I have a question for all of our residents that are here today. By a show of hands, how many of you have a contract, currently have a contract with a waste hauler?
Thank you for that.
Okay, we're not the problem, right? We're not the problem. We are responsible, considerate citizens. We've talked about there are a lot of our neighbors who are not considerate and they are not responsible. What we're looking at doing is maybe making it mandatory that they become a little bit responsible and more considerate. You mentioned you live on a dead-end street, you have traffic collection 5 days a week. I live on Park Street, which is several hundred feet long, and we have at least 3 days a week we have garbage collection. We have Tri-County, my wife and I have Tri-County, pay $111 a quarter right now. Neighbors have Raccoon, neighbors have Waste Management. Gentleman this morning was around the corner from me, came, couldn't stay for the meeting, said he has Raccoon, pays $81 a quarter. Doesn't have recycling. So there are differences. If we can put this out to bid with whatever we decide as a group we want included in that bid, and the bids come back, maybe that $81 from Tri-County or Raccoon is now $70. If it comes back and it's 85, like, time out, nope, we're rejecting all bids. So that's where I think we're at as supervisors. We want to proceed with at least exploring this and seeing what comes of it. And again, we're a group here, I think, of considerate, responsible citizens, and we need to drag some of our neighbors into that as well.
You know, Donnie, one other quick thing that you could add here too, and I think everybody needs to research this in the room. Look at Tri-County, look at their size and their capability. Look at Waste Management and their equipment, their size, their capability. Look at Raccoon. Now, there's a reason, when I sit here and listen to this, that if Tri-County's 111 a quarter, and there's a reason that Raccoon's 81. And I'm going to tell you, I just said to Mike here, now I don't want to pick on companies, and I'm not, but I got to tell you something. I watch a lot of this. I watch a lot of municipalities, how they take care of their equipment, how they do what they do, and what they get accomplished with it. And I got to tell you something. I know one thing, West Mead Township, I'm doggone proud every time I pull up in front of one of your houses, because our equipment is standing tall. where I'm headed with this is, just the other day, I saw a waste hauler going over Leslie Road, and I saw stuff leaking. I saw oil leaks. I rolled my window down when I went by the thing. I heard an air leak. You couldn't DOT that truck. DOT's Department of Transportation stops and they DOT a truck from bumper to bumper. And there's a reason for the cost increase and decrease because of what what the hauler is willing to put into it too. So my thinking is, you know, if I see a little better piece of equipment, I feel a little bit better about that because I know that they're gonna get the product and they're gonna get it to the landfill where it belongs, okay? Now, I've seen some of these other haulers that are going around in pickup trucks too, okay? And then I go through our industrial park downtown, or down in West Mead here, and I look and I see a truck over here, a garbage truck, and these pickups are going to this garbage truck. So, trust me, their costs are minimal compared to like $111 versus 81 or 70 or whatever it is. Look at the equipment, look at the size of the company and their capabilities. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, that's okay. But for me, that means something to me when I see just a little better piece of equipment coming into our community. And we've had problems with some of these haulers. West Mead 1 parking lot, the township went down there a year ago and did everything we could to help fix the parking lot. We had what I'll call is a substandard waste hauler, blew a hydraulic line, drive by West Mead 1 on Alden Street. There's a spot probably 15 feet around where they blew a hydraulic line, and now we're faced with that mess. And it damaged the parking lot. And I don't exactly know which hauler it was because it happened through the night. When we come in, we saw the mess. They left us with the mess. We can't point fingers because we don't know who it was. And nobody's going to admit to that. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes with a cost, you're getting a little bit better product too, better service, better truck. People, Mr. Sheriff and I even talked last week, he notices the difference in some of the drivers and how they drive the truck and how they treat the truck. You know, and things like that, there's a cost associated with that. And to me, that means a lot. You know, if you got somebody who cares, when they come into your community, as much as you care about your housing development, Autumn, wherever it may be, Limber Creek, instead of that guy going through that housing development 40 mile an hour, he's abiding by the speed, you know, because he's a little higher notch. So to me, I think that's worth it.
That's true. And it's also the services that might be included, like some people might be getting $70 a quarter now, but all they get is waste collection, and it might even be limited. Other people get, you know, recycling, and it's a little more. It would depend, and there's a way to bid that so we could even make some of those things add-ons. Yes?
Actually, you both are correct. The Salisbury contract is 77 to 111 based on what size container you purchase. So
Right.
That's why you've heard both of those numbers. And John, the only thing I would say to that is, it would be great to think you could change someone's mindset or their behavior, but as an ambulance guy who goes through all the municipalities, across 30 municipalities, I can tell you now, Meadville's got really strict ordinances and also garbage contract, and there's places in Meadville that have never changed and won't change, and that you know all where they're at because you can all drive through there. So regardless of what we think we're going to do, it's not going to improve or change people who are not in this room. It just won't. So I guess, to me, let's just take it off the table and go ahead and get a bid if you want to get a bid and see where it's at. But I don't think we're going to change people who aren't here today.
No problem.
Okay, blue and then green.
For those companies out there that do recycling, do we look into what they do with their recycled products?
Well, sure, you want to do that. And one of the things I always put in a contract is a certification from the recycling facility they're going to use that acknowledges that this hauler is going to bring, I've agreed to accept the material from this hauler. I have the capabilities to accept the volume of material and list the items and things like that. Because I've seen bids before where somebody will bid a really low price and then, whoops, they really don't have a place to take things.
So they're just putting it in a landfill?
Whatever.
So that's something we would look at?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Hi.
I was at the Crawford County Fairgrounds for the meeting. I'm still not in favor of this because I'm a one-person household. I pay Tri-County $21 for a quarter, and then I pay a sticker for a sticker, and I only put out a bag like every 6 to 8 weeks. So there's no way that you guys are going to be offering me anything cheaper than what I'm doing right now. And the way everybody's talking, and you can call me selfish, but I'm going to be paying for extra for
Unless that's an
everybody
option in the
else's
contract.
service.
You know, because there could be multiple rate structures in a contract. So there's a structure for homes that generate more, but there can also be a small quantity option where people pay that collection rate and then they just buy bags. I think Sad's already has that.
Yeah, I don't buy a bag, I buy.
By stickers, well, same.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what is the cost of your sticker?
$2.50.
Okay.
And I only put a bag out like every 6 to 8 weeks because I recycle everything I can.
So do we.
Yeah.
And I use the,
Recycle at?
I recycle like, well, I have a cart, they give me a cart, so I recycle everything, paper, boxes that I can tear down and everything
Through
else.
Tri-County you
Through
recycle?
Tri-County.
They don't
yes.
charge you for the recycling?
Nope,
It's
that
built into
container
the
is
waste
free.
collection. It's built into that flat fee.
Yeah, that container's free. Because when I first started with Tri-County, I only paid for the sticker. Then they increased it where I had to pay $21 every 3 months just for the service. Then I had to pay for the sticker for a bag, which I supply. But I'm a one-person household. So, and like I said, I recycle everything that I can, and so I only put one bag out like every 6 to 8 weeks. So that's the cheapest for me.
And you're not the only one, I mean, there is a lot of single households. And I mean, that's something we can put into the contract.
Yeah.
No, it may not affect your price any, yeah, but still, you're only one person and we got everybody else sitting there that, you know.
Right, right.
It'd be nice to know how many people are in your situation.
Yeah, exactly, because when Tri-County went to the quarterly fee, I called them and I said, you know, I'm a single retired person. I said, why am, you know, this doesn't seem fair. And they said, well, they were getting complaints because of the fees going up for everybody else. So in order to keep their prices down, then I had to pay extra. That's what they told me. And I recycle everything. Like I had a microwave that went out. Took it to the recycling place in Meadville and they paid me for it. So these people that are leaving, you know, stoves and stuff in their driveway, why aren't they taking it and getting paid for it?
Okay, here?
You certainly sound like a very conscientious woman who I can't imagine you would burn anything.
I do not.
But under this scenario, my concern would be that if you give people the option of paying $21 a quarter and $2.50, they're gonna burn everything they can.
Yeah.
Sift out what won't burn, and
Exactly.
that'll be their one bag.
Yeah,
So I think you'd have to be cautious to somehow not allow that to happen.
Yeah, but I have the recycling cart, so I am able to recycle all of my paper, all of my boxes, everything.
You're not the type of person who's a problem in this town.
Right, yeah, and well, the other concern, and that's a good point, is that some people will take the recycling cart to pay the $21, but all their garbage is really going in there, which is now, we have worthless material being collected. It contaminates the entire truck, so there's a lot of things at play there, but
Which they're legally allowed, permitted to burn their garbage, correct?
right now, yeah, so, yeah.
I mean,
That's a big problem.
We
That's
have
right.
a current burning ordinance that says you cannot burn your garbage. but you have to be either turned in or a complaint made. The police department or the fire department would then, investigate.
But I think it's the
and
back end
look
that's
into
routine
that.
role, right? I mean, really, at the end.
Well, that's,
Like
and
John
that's
said,
what we
you're
talk
taking- You're
about.
taking them
Yep.
to court and pay attorney's fees to,
Well,
that's the problem.
part of the problem, Eric, is, and I just this week, we were dealing with some stuff, and I was talking to the chief, and our chief of police. And 9 times out of 10, this is what happens. Say Mike's burning, I live beside Mike. I don't like the way Mike burns, okay? So I'm gonna go screaming to the police department, and I'll file a complaint. Whatever you do, don't tell them who called me and complained. The reason why is I don't want to go to court, okay? And I don't want my neighbor PO'd at me because, we at least get along, but I don't like he does that, but keep me out of it. It ends right there. It ends right there. The reason why is because if it has to go and be pursued, because Mike doesn't want to quit burning, doesn't care whether I like it or not, there's where part of the problem is at. Because other people, when you file that complaint, it has to go to the next step. They don't want their name out there, being the bad neighbor and this and that and the other thing. So that's a problem as well.
What is allowed to be burned in West Mead?
Well, you can have fire if you want to have a cookout or something like that, you can have stuff like that.
Yeah.
But as far as burning any mattresses, household garbage, anything like that, that's out. But I mean, if we roll in there on a complaint, it's either going to be the fire department, one of the 3 supervisors, Jill, the police department. If we roll in there and find out that it's really not a domestic fire, then we can take some steps.
Can you burn paper
Legally? You can burn paper, but I can tell you can't let it smolder.
No,
And if you're gonna have a fire in West Mead Township, it has to be manned, from the time it's lit to the time it goes out.
How about tree trimming?
Well, you could probably burn tree trimmings, but I would be selective on what I burn, because if it's gonna smolder and smoke because it's green,
Yeah.
the only way to stop the smoke is to keep the flame.
I
If you keep it flamed up, 9 times out of 10, you're not gonna have a problem. But if it smolders and you're called into dinner and an hour or 2 goes by and you go back out and now the whole neighborhood is in smoke, that's the type of thing, I mean, everybody has to be appreciative or considerate of their neighbor. And that's the only thing that we've ever asked people to do. And you'd be shocked how many people just.
What about inside wood burning stoves that some people have for their business to keep them warm? I mean,
We've had very minimal complaints on stuff like that. We had a couple complaints down in the Liberty Street area when we found out the guy was actually burning demolition. And demolition stinks, it smolders, it's bad. But we addressed that, and we've had very minimal problem with that type of stuff. But,
Well,
I
if you
mean,
take a piece of wood that's not completely dry and you throw it into a wood burning stove, that's gonna stink just like somebody burning garbage.
Oh, yeah, it will.
Same thing, and
It will.
if that's legal, they can do that.
Well, it's pretty hard to tell somebody they can't heat their house if that's how they do it, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And, I don't know. I will tell you, the township, we've done a lot of brush projects. We just finished one Friday. And we've tried to give wood to people that we know use it. But it's wood that's gotta be, you gotta season it,
Yes.
burn it,
Yes.
if you're burning it correctly, or you're gonna have problems in your house. So, anyhow.
Yes.
Is it an option to, instead of doing by township, have a county-wide trash service that would be done? Has that been done anywhere in Pennsylvania?
Cross over county lines?
No, just multiple counties.
Countywide.
Yes, I actually know of one county that does all the bidding for all the municipalities, and they broke it up into like solid waste districts, and it's very successful.
Because that would cut down on cross-township dumping potentially, if everyone across the board has the same level of service.
That hasn't risen to the potential, but, I mean, it's a possibility, but it would take a lot of intergovernmental cooperation.
Commissioner Henry said no.
That was a kind way of saying that.
Countywide saldos, you mentioned any kind of countywide ordinances. There are municipalities out there who don't want to hear just the beginning word of it, and I don't either, because this room's, pretty full for a Saturday morning. I can only imagine what we feel across 50 plus municipalities regardless. Not that I disagree with that wouldn't be a better option for pricing, but that's not what.
Counties have very little power, really, when it comes down to it, to tell the municipalities what to do in Pennsylvania. A lot of states, the county's like the smallest form of government with any power, but in Pennsylvania, we have 2,700 proud municipalities that like to do their own thing, so.
There is one countywide recycling program in the state, Philadelphia.
True.
I'd like to wrap this up, if that's all right with everybody else. One last question that I have, is there any major serious opposition to us at least trying to put something together and sending it out for a bid with the option to reject any and all bids? Is there any objection to that?
The only thing I would ask on behalf of the young lady there would be, on the cafeteria style plan of the options, I think that's what we have to look at, to be fair, to see what, what would be, because that is concerning to me what she said. There are a lot of folks on fixed incomes, but I think it's a fine.
I certainly agree that we should explore various levels of service and try and include that as much as we can. I know that, again,
And we'll investigate also what existing prices are so that we have a better feel, because they're kind of all over the board depending on who's doing the contracting.
And I'd be really interested in seeing, what prices we can get back if they compare to your homeowners association. Maybe it'll be better.
What's nice about your homeowners association, do they come to your house or do you take your garbage to a dumpster?
No, they come to the house.
Come to your house, okay.
Can we piggyback on your contract?
Another thing, too, how many people here are interested, do you want recycling in your garbage service? See, and that's gonna be one of the problems. There's very few of these contractors that do recycling. I only know of one right now. Is there three? Who's the other two?
They'll do it if it's in a contract, but see, they won't do it for subscription because not everybody that has subscription wants to pay for the recycling, so they just don't do it. But if you ask for it in a contract, they all have the capabilities of doing
And I
it.
see, I think that's still a viable thing that we have to have is recycling. There's still a lot of stuff being thrown away that can be recycled.
And like, Brenda, could you give like the 15-second answer to why there is no recycling in Crawford County? Because people don't always know. But
Oh, so we have these lovely drop-off recycling. Well, you're from Mead Township, you know the story. So you also know that if you went to just come out here. I think Jill has some excellent footage on the things that people believed were be able to be recycled at the bins. Golf bag, complete with golf clubs, bicycles, chicken wings from a restaurant, like whole garbage bags of those. Things that, if you clean fish and put it in a bag, if you could get it into the dumps, well, that's the problem. They call them dumpsters instead of recycling bins, and so their picture was there it went. When that program closed, I spent a solid 3 months doing nothing but answering phone calls. Oh, and my favorites were things like, I recycle everything. And I said, you do? What kind of things do you put in the bins? Well, everything. And I'm like, so do you put bread bags in there? Yes. And I said, then you're part of the problem, because we take bottles, jugs, jars, and cans. Made from number 1, number 2 plastic, and I went through, and they're like, oh. I'm like, well, that's what shut the program down. So please don't tell me you recycle everything, because we don't have options for everything. Or I recycle everything I can, but I burn my papers. And I'm like, ugh. Then you don't recycle everything you can. It is a trash problem in our county. It's not a recycling problem. Thank you, Eric.
And part of the reason the program went away was money. Definitely. At the time, the commodity market, which is what recyclables are, totally tanked out. It bottomed out. 75% of the things we were collecting at the curb had zero value at the time. So the price to the county went up more than 30%, which was more than was in the budget for sure, along with all the contamination. So, yes.
The one thing Tri-County did that I was upset with was they now no longer allow me to recycle glass. So this morning, there was a glass recycling event up at Sagertown. So I went to that and dropped off my glass. I brought the man's name, that business owner. He will work with anybody.
We're aware of him.
Yeah, so I would love to see glass being recycled.
So you can work with your supervisors to host a session like that right here. And they don't even need to be present. The Bayfront Glass is one of them. And did they have Bayfront on theirs, or did they use the other one?
Yeah, they have both.
Did they have Prism?
Yeah.
Okay, because there's two
Yeah.
now
And
they're
then
in
this
Erie
has
County.
the composting company that's actually located off of the Sagertown exit.
Yes, and I hope you know about conservation compost. They'll take your items they'll compost it for you, and they're actually looking at services where they'll come to your home or come to your business and pick them up. So Jill has their information. It's kind of a cool thing that we have here in Crawford County.
I'm glad that recycling was brought up. I don't know how many of you know, but the Crawford County Recycling Program started in the parking lot at the West Mead 1 Volunteer Fire Station. And Tim Gable, one of our life members, is here, and I know that he put a lot of man hours into that. I put a few man hours into it. We had a lot of our members started with 2 or 3 dumpsters in our parking lot. Eventually it moved up here to the Township building, and then it went down to McHenry Street. And then we ran it for about 10 years as a fundraiser, and over the period of 10 years, we made $140,000. That sounds like $14,000 a year, but one year we made $70,000. That meant the other 9 years we made $70,000. And then at the end, we were losing money, so that's why we got out of it. Turned it over to solid waste authority. And unfortunately, like Brenda said, due to contamination, they had to shut it down. So it is important to me that we have that option, recycling option. Due to time constraints, and we've been here about an hour and 40 minutes now. Last call for any final questions or comments. Okay, hearing none, I'd like to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules. I thank the supervisors, Mike and John and I think we know what we need to do. We need to at least try to put something together with Brenda and Michelle and send it out for bids with the option to be able to reject any and all bids. And go from there.
I just want to say one thing. I want to thank Michelle and Brenda both. And listen, Brenda's the lady you want on your side. She has been across this Commonwealth. She knows these garbage. And if you've got questions, Brenda can answer them. And if she can't, she'll get you the answer. The same way with Brenda. Brenda's solid waste, she knows. And she knows what works and what doesn't work in this county.
Michelle was the first one.
Yeah, but I was talking about Brenda. But I'm telling you.
I was like, wow.
Both ladies. Listen, and I'm telling you, Michelle, like, she's been all over, and she said she's been in Texas. I didn't know that. But she's very knowledgeable about this and about these contracts, the ins and outs of contracts. So I think this is the lady here we want to be helping us with our contract. I mean, I don't know what meeting this has been with her, and she's been around for ages up here, but I think this.
Ready to retire.
Is that
I know you're only 29. So, for that, I just want to thank both these ladies, and they do put their hearts into this, and you folks out here, thank you. I mean, I know this is a big thing, and nobody likes to say you're going to do this, but us responsible people, it's not us that we have to worry about. It's the ones we got to convince, saying, listen, we got to start to clean things up here a little bit. I don't want to look at your garbage no more. And I don't want to smell your garbage burning at night. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I like these burning barrels, oh, it's not coming out very much, guys. That is a nasty stuff. What are you burning there? So, thank you all very much.
I'd just like, if I may add one last comment.
One back here.
What's the time frame or message for written comments?
That's my last comment. Well, I wanted to say that it does take time to put the right language, together for the specs and everything. So don't expect, to see an announcement in the paper in the next month or so that, the township's seeking proposals. And part of it too is also going to be timing. We're going to track fuel and things like that because you don't want to go out while, maybe this is artificially inflated right now for lots of reasons.
Just one question. What actually prompted the interest in a township garbage service.
Just seeing all the garbage laying around the township.
That's the key.
That, and I think we thought that eventually DEP was gonna mandate it.
You were on the
Due to
cusp.
due to our population and our population density, but
But what Mike said is baseline. Drive different streets, different areas of the township, and see what's out there.
you know, Commissioner Henry and I have had this conversation before. We agree, we both favor limited government. We don't like government mandates. You know, I don't want to make everybody do anything. I have conservative values and I like individual freedoms that we have here in the United States of America. But like we've discussed in this room, we're a group of considerate, responsible citizens, and unfortunately, there are a lot out in our township who are not. And we're gonna drag them kicking and screaming into becoming responsible and considerate.
One quick thing that I will say that concerns me. One, I'd like to say thank you to everybody that did show up and show interest here. But this is a poor turnout. This is a poor turnout, and that's what worries me. Those that don't, and then you start the process and the steps, and then it's when all hell breaks loose, for lack of a better word. People are PO'd, and you always get the, well, I didn't know anything about it. You're not making me do that. And we've tried to get it out there. We don't know how to get it out there any more than what it is. And again, that's the part that worries me, because believe me, I see a lot of people, and I've been told a lot of things, especially this year. And, you know, we're living in a different society now. It's different. There's no respect, and that's the problem, you know, and people don't want to be told anything anymore.
So my experience with that, John, is that at meetings like this, you either get people who are really for it, or have questions, or really against it. But that middle of the road people who think it's a good idea, but they're not inclined to come out, there's probably more of them than the vocal minority that will really call you constantly, but you have to judge how many calls you get and things like that. So that's why these meetings, yeah.
I think, and to piggyback off what John's saying, we've done this is the fourth time now. When we kind of did a survey a number of years ago, we sent out notifications. We've had these kind of meetings, or at least informal meetings, inviting people and asking questions. And that's where, even like Peter's saying, when can people give comments? And we're accepting them. I just provided you with a bunch of the comments this morning. So we're hearing from people. There's been kind of a shift. A lot of township residents didn't want over-regulation, over-governmental intrusion per se. But now, people are more, because of recycling being gone, they actually have more garbage services. You see more of the cans out there. So now, people are saying, well, maybe this is a good time to further investigate it and to at least get the bids. What Dawn said about, we may not award them, but at least see what they come in at.
You want to be serious enough that you get the best price too. I mean, haulers know when you're just shopping, so they're not going to show you their best price if they think you don't really, you're not have the intention of even awarding it ever. So, you know, before we would release a document, I would think we would want to have some kind of, you know, show them that you, as a whole, as a community, has an interest in it.
But also, we have the option of start it and then stop. Okay? And I think that's a good thing there, that people don't have to, if it doesn't work out to our favor, we're not going to stay there. We're trying to spend everybody's money like it's our own and protect it as much as possible, because there's nothing harder than trying to stretch a dollar today. It just doesn't go very far. We paid the most for one of our trucks here that we've ever paid for a truck. And it's equal to one we bought in '09. You know, and like you said, Donnie said that we have an idea of what Michelle said. Brenda said. in our head.
Someone
we
said
want to pay for that car And that's the way I went into this thing, what I really wanna pay for this truck that meets our needs. And I'm thinking 200,000 is plenty, because we paid 175 or 80 for one in '09, $230,000.
I bet you it isn't gonna last as long as.
Probably not. And I gotta tell you that, you can't just cut checks for this kind of stuff. And we're trying to do roads, a half a mile of road in West Mead Township costs $200,000, half a mile.
And maybe if this also helps with you being able to get government assistance with different programs, that's the way to weed out
Right.
to the other people.
Grant
Because
money.
that's saving them still money that maybe their taxes, you're never not gonna.
Instead of
pay.
raising them, you could leave them alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we do this? People that ain't on board, they pay higher taxes. You send in proof of garbage service and you get a discount. There you go. Hey, I know how to get a discount on my taxes.
Give his name so we can send them residents.
One thing under a single hauler contract is, you're worried about enforcement. Well, when everybody on your street has the same collection day, it's pretty easy to see who isn't participating, Peer pressure is interesting.
There's no sleep on my road when the garbage trucks come through. Same
All right.
day every week.
Just to wrap up, I'd like to thank Brenda and Michelle for being here this morning and leading our presentation. I'd like to thank all of you for taking time out to be here as well and providing your questions and comments. I'd like to thank Kevin and Armstrong for videotaping this. I guess we were live this morning and it'll be on 30 times between now and next week.
My whole neighborhood's gonna be mad at me.
Thank you all very much. Have a nice weekend.
Good to see you.
My wife's all-